In today's lesson, we are going to be talking about nutrition and how to make healthy food choices. This information can be found on pages 42 to 48 in your wellness book. If you need to download a copy of the wellness booklet, you will need to go to the FRC Phys Ed website. Enter www.frcphysed.weebly.com into your browser. Go to Courses, Grade 10, Mandatory Assignments, and click on Introduction to Wellness Unit Book. Nutrition is the science of food and how the body uses it in health and disease. With so many different food options in today's world, sometimes we forget that food is fuel for our body. It provides us with energy and nutrients which allow our body to function properly. Essential nutrients are nutrients that the body is unable to produce on its own, so they must be obtained through our diets. There are 6 essential nutrients. They are protein, fat, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and water. We will be looking at these nutrients in more detail throughout the lesson. Canada's Food Guide provides information and tips on how to make healthy food choices to help fuel our body with the essential nutrients. You have probably seen Canada's Food Guide before, but recently it has been updated. There is a lot of information in Canada's Food Guide, but its main messages focuses on the following: eat plenty of vegetables and fruit, eat protein foods, choose whole grain foods, and make water your choice drink. Following these basic rules can make it easier to make healthy food choices and ensure you are getting all the essential nutrients. Using a plate method like this, where half of your plate is filled with fruits and vegetables and 1/4 is protein and whole grains, can be a great way to keep your meals balanced. We will be referring to Canada's Food Guide in more detail and giving tips on how to make healthy nutrition choices. One of the best ways to make healthy nutrition choices is by eating plenty of fruits and vegetables. In a meal, aim for half of your plate to be fruits and vegetables and choose ones with different textures, colors, and shapes to fit your taste. Fruits and vegetables are important because they contain vitamins and minerals. Vitamins are important for growth, reproduction, and overall health maintenance. There are 2 types of vitamins: water-soluble and fat-soluble. Water-soluble vitamins dissolve in water. Your body can handle high amounts of these because any excess will be eliminated through sweat or urine. Vitamin C and B are 2 examples of these. You may have heard that steaming or baking vegetables is one of the best ways to cook vegetables, and this is because a lot of nutrients are lost if we boil them. Fat-soluble vitamins are vitamins which are stored in fat. Our body doesn't eliminate them like water-soluble vitamins, and instead, excess amounts are stored in our fat tissues. Vitamin A, D, E, and K are all fat-soluble vitamins. An interesting fact is that eating too many carrots can actually make your skin turn orange. Beta-carotene, which is found in carrots, is a fat-soluble vitamin. If you consume high amounts, your body will store the excess in the fat pads of your hands and feet. But don't worry, you'd have to consume a lot of carrots for this to happen. Minerals are necessary for helping build and maintain the structural elements of our body, like teeth, hormones, and muscles. They help with the regulation of body functions like muscle contractions, blood clotting, and proper heart function, and they help in the growth and maintenance of body tissues. Some important minerals you may have heard of are calcium, which is important for building strong bones, iron, found in things like spinach, which help carry oxygen in our blood, potassium, commonly found in bananas, help regulate blood pressure, and magnesium, which helps keep our bones and immune system strong. Today's lesson is not just about going over nutrition basics, but also to think about your own nutrition. Do you make sure to include fruits and vegetables regularly into your diet? How many fruits and vegetables have you consumed already today? And what are some ways you could incorporate more fruits and vegetables into your diet? Take a few minutes to think about these questions and your own nutrition. Here are some tips on how to include more fruits and vegetables into your diet. Try making half of your plate fruits and vegetables. Choose whole or cut vegetables and fruits more often than juice, as fruit juice and fruit juice concentrates are high in sugars and have little fiber. Wash, chop, and refrigerate or freeze extra vegetables when preparing meals, so you have extra for the next day. Keep a bowl of fresh fruit on the counter so you can grab them as a quick and easy snack on the go. Keep cut up fresh vegetables in the fridge for a quick and healthy snack. Choosing whole grain foods are a healthier choice than refined grains because they are less processed and include all parts of the grain. They are also a great source of carbohydrates, which is important because it gives our body energy. Carbohydrates are the most important source of energy for our body. Our body breaks down carbohydrates into glucose, which can be used immediately for energy, or stored in the liver as glycogen for later use. Sometimes carbohydrates get a bad name because if we eat too many of them, they are stored in our body as fat. However, they are still a very important part of our diet, and we should be consuming them regularly in our day. Whole grain foods are important because they not only provide us with energy, but they contain more nutrients and fiber than refined carbohydrates. We sometimes call whole grains complex carbs. This is because they are made up of more complex molecules that take longer for the body to break down. This leaves us feeling full for longer, as well as provides us with prolonged amount of energy. Some examples of complex carbs are whole wheat pasta, broccoli, spinach, and brown rice. Simple carbohydrates, on the other hand, do not contain as many nutrients and often have very little fiber. They are made up of more simple sugars that the body breaks down very quickly. This is called a sugar rush, where we get a big spike of energy, but then usually crash very quickly after. Some examples of simple carbs are things like white bread, soda, and candy. While it's still okay to eat simple carbohydrates, we should be choosing whole grains and complex carbs more often. Now, thinking to your own diet, what types of carbohydrates do you typically eat? Are you mostly consuming whole grains or simple carbohydrates? For your test, make sure you can identify some foods that are good sources of fiber. Here are some tips on how to include more whole grains into your diet. Make sure your choices are actually whole grain. The ingredient list should have the word whole grain or 100% whole grain followed by the name of the grain as one of the first ingredients. Sometimes food products may use the term multigrain on its packaging, and that only means there are multiple grains and does not necessarily mean they are a whole grain. Start your day with a bowl of oatmeal, whole grain cereal, or whole grain toast. To increase the amount of whole grain foods in your recipes, try adding things like barley, bulgur, and quinoa to soups, salads, and stir fries. Eating foods that contain protein is important for proper muscle growth and repair. Fad diets have often misled us to believe that most of our food should be protein-based. However, we only need about 10 to 15% of our total caloric intake from protein sources. If we use the plate method, 1/4 of our plate should contain foods that are good sources of protein. Can you think of some foods that are good sources of protein? Sometimes we think of only animal-based foods as protein sources. However, there are many plant-based sources of protein. Can you think of any? There are a variety of different sources of protein that can suit your diet needs. Some good plant-based sources of protein include tofu, quinoa, lentils, nut butters, and seeds. Some animal sources of protein include eggs, chicken, fish, beef, and dairy products like yogurt and milk. When choosing meat products, try to choose leaner cuts of meat like extra lean ground beef or skinless chicken breasts. When preparing meats, choose to bake, poach, or grill more often than frying or breading. Also, try to limit meat products that are high in sodium, like processed meats. When we are making food choices, make sure to choose foods that contain healthy fats. Just like carbs, sometimes fats get a bad name. However, they are still very important for proper bodily function. Fat is important because it provides us with a source of energy, it insulates the body, it helps cushion vital organs in the body, and it also helps aid the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. It also adds flavor and texture to food, making them taste really good. There are 2 different types of fats that we'll be looking at in closer detail on the next few slides. Can you think of any foods that contain healthier fats? How about foods that contain unhealthy fats? The two types of fats are unsaturated and saturated. Unsaturated fats are considered healthier and are liquid at room temperature. They are usually found in plant-based products. Some examples of foods with unsaturated fat are nuts, olives, avocados, and certain types of fish. Saturated fats are considered unhealthier and are solid at room temperature and usually found in animal products. Some foods that are high in saturated fats are fatty cuts of beef and pork and high-fat dairy foods like whole milk, butter, cheese, and ice cream. Again, it's okay to consume foods that contain saturated fats, but we should try and limit how often we are eating them and choose foods that contain unsaturated fats more often. Another food tip from Canada's Food Guide is to make water your drink of choice. Water is important for nutrient and waste transport. It helps with digestion and absorption of nutrients. It can help regulate body temperature, and it also helps lubricate joints. Water is very important for the body to function properly, so it's important to keep ourselves hydrated. We can lose water by sweating and breathing, so that is why drinking water during exercise is very important. We also lose water by getting rid of waste, or in other words, going to the bathroom, as well as consuming products like coffee, tea, and alcohol. Anytime our body loses water, we need to replace the stores of what is lost. Because water is so vital, it is important for us to evaluate whether we are getting enough water in our diet. Do you think you drink enough water during the day? What are some ways you can increase your water intake? Remember that drinking products that are high in caffeine, like coffee, cola, and energy drinks, can dehydrate us, so we need to drink even more water if we have consumed these. We also need to drink more water on days that we exercise or sweat more. Here are some tips to increase your water intake. Drink water with your meals as opposed to sugary colas or coffee that can often lead to dehydration. Try a fruit or herb-infused water or carbonated water as an alternative to soda. Include other options that are high in water like milk or unsweetened soy or almond milk. Consuming fruits and vegetables that are high in water like watermelon, cucumbers, and celery are also a great way to increase your water intake. And finally, carrying a reusable water bottle is not only good for the environment, but it can be a great way to increase your water intake during the day. Based on what you've learned so far, which of the essential nutrients provide us with energy? Or in other words, which ones have calories? Can you guess which has the most amount of energy? The three nutrients that provide us with energy are protein, fats, and carbohydrates. Even though they each have a different function in the body, they all contain calories and provide us with energy. Here is a table showing how much energy each of these nutrients have. Each have a different amount of calories per gram, where fats have the most amount of energy. This doesn't mean that we should avoid eating fat altogether, but we should limit how much fat and especially what types of fats we are eating. Alcohol is not an essential nutrient, but this shows you it is also high in calories. For your quiz, make sure you know how many calories per gram each of these has, as you will need to do a few calculations with them. Here is an example of a food label. We will be covering these in more detail in the next health lesson, but for now, let's look at the amount of carbohydrates, fat, and protein it has. If we look at the number of grams there are and multiply this by the number of calories per gram in each nutrient, we can figure out how many calories there are from fat, protein, and carbohydrates. If we recall from the last slide, 1 gram of fat contains 9 calories. This product contains 14 grams of fat. We multiply this by 9, which tells us there are 126 calories from fat. Next, let's look at carbohydrates. If this product contains 26 grams and there are 4 calories per gram, we have 104 calories from carbohydrates. And finally, if there are 4 grams of protein, there will be 16 calories from protein since there are 4 calories for every gram. If you add all of these up, it should be roughly the same amount of calories that are listed on the top of the label. So if we add up 126 with 104 and 16, it equals 246, which is close to 250, which is listed at the top of the label. Here is a different food label that you can practice doing these calculations on. Remember, you will need to know how many calories there are per gram for each of the nutrients. Pause the video and figure out how many calories there are from each nutrient. If you did the calculations correctly, you should have 72 calories from fat, 148 calories from carbohydrates, and 12 calories from protein. In this lesson, we've been talking about how to make healthy food choices and giving lots of different examples of healthier foods. The last question I want you to think about is whether you think there are such things as good and bad foods. Do you think some foods are bad and we should avoid eating them because they are high in calories and don't have very many nutrients? Should we only be eating good foods or foods that are considered healthy because they have lots of vitamins and minerals? Take a few minutes to think about this. Nutrition is really about balance. It's okay to sometimes have foods that are not as healthy as others, but we should try to limit how often we are eating these. Try to aim to have balanced meals most of the time, where half of your plate is filled with fruits and vegetables, 1/4 is filled with whole grains that contain lots of fiber, and the other quarter is filled with healthy protein options. Also be mindful of what type of fat you are consuming, aiming to consume unsaturated more often than saturated fats, and limiting how much processed food you eat that are high in sodium and sugar. The food you eat should be nutritious, contain lots of vitamins and minerals, but it should also be enjoyable. So remember to include a variety of foods into your diet and include treats every now and then.